maybe we have to wait a little while to see Trey Lance, but 2 years? For what it's worth, Lance told me at the draft that he thinks he'll be the best quarterback in this class. Coming up, why Todd McShay thinks 2 years is a ridiculous amount of time to wait to let Lance play. As we welcome you to NFL Live, we've got all kinds of stuff coming your way, including Todd McShay's way too early 2022 mock draft, but it's never too early for that. Find out about a quarterback that you're going to want to know. You see Diana Rossini and Keyshawn Johnson here as well, and let's begin with San Francisco, guys. The 49ers, and one of the biggest questions surrounding Trey Lance is the experience. The number 3 overall pick of the 2021 draft threw just 318 pass attempts in college. That's the fewest by a first-round quarterback in the last 40 years. In fact, he and Mike Vick are the only 2 first-round quarterbacks to throw under 400 pass attempts in college over that span. Also worth noting that Vick only started 2 games in his rookie season. So, Key, you see the lack of collegiate reps. Are you okay with the idea of him sitting for a while, or do you think he needs to get on the field early to go ahead and get better and get some experience?
No, I'm fine with him sitting, Laura. I think when you look at it, you look at that chart right there. That chart says everything. All those quarterbacks except Mark Sanchez as a rookie, Mark wasn't even ready to play, but the team was a veteran team, so all he had to do was hand the ball off and watch them play defense. When you look at Trey Lance, he's coming from the FCS, not the attempts. That's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about him processing the information from a defensive standpoint, understanding the tight windows in the NFL. It's totally different when you're running away from a 5'7", 160-pound true freshman out of some school in Minnesota, opposed to a grown man with kids that is in the NFL. It's a totally different situation. So when you look at that, Laura, you have to say that is set up right for him. I never felt like he was going in to a Super Bowl ready team to start and take over. I've always felt like a year and a half, 2 years before he becomes a starter, unless something happens to Jimmy G.
Yeah. Hey, Key. Hi, Laura. You know, the way I see this is all the pressure has been put on the quarterback that was going to get picked at that spot, right? Because we know what the 49ers did in terms of a trade and what they gave away to get a quarterback. So Trey Lance has gone from the quarterback with the most pressure on him, probably the night of the draft, to really what looks like the least amount of pressure, because the organization, it seems like, from obviously the owner Jed York down to their head coach Kyle Shanahan, their GM John Lynch, it's almost like they're reading from a script that they've all agreed on, which is, let's take the pressure off. We don't need to add any more pressure to this young rookie who has time to develop, learn our system, and make that transition from college to the NFL, which we all know can be a difficult jump. So this is a really smart move by the Niners right now to go, look, we've got Jimmy G. And the reality is, it may not be 2 years that we need to wait to see Trey Lance. He could play next year, but they have the luxury of Jimmy Garoppolo, a starter. If he's healthy, he's going to be out there. This is smart. Jed York said 2 years. He might as well said 17. It really doesn't matter. It's obvious. The message coming out of San Francisco now is pressure's off.
Yeah, I've been of the mindset, Diana, that I wanted to see Trey Lance immediately just to get him that playing time because he hasn't had it. But when you lay it out like that, it does make a lot of sense that why not make sure that he's got the luxury of not feeling that pressure. Let's get our ESPN senior draft analyst Todd McShay in here. And Todd, what do you make of Jed York's comments that maybe we don't see Trey Lance for a while, maybe even 2 years?
Listen, I don't care about the message. I care about reality. And you look at it, yes, I understand. Trey Lance, 17 starts, FCS, only one game this past season. But when you study the tape, he processes as fast as Mac Jones from Alabama or any other quarterback in this entire class. And again, being real, the last 13 years there have been 39 quarterbacks drafted in the first round. Only 3 of them did not start a game. So history tells us it's a long shot that Lance is not going to start. I get it. Garoppolo's there. He can be a good starter when he's healthy, but he hasn't stayed healthy. So, first of all, I think they're going to try to work him in regardless. Second of all, there's a real good chance Jimmy G gets injured. And third of all, you don't trade all the way up. And even if it was for Mac Jones, and adjust your mindset because Trey Lance blew you away, and then not play him this upcoming season. I think Trey Lance is going to start more games than any other quarterback for San Fran.
I think for day one, Trey Lance was always the 49ers pick. They gave people whatever they wanted to give them to run with. It was never about Mac Jones. I think when you look at it, though, you have to say to yourself, this team is a couple years removed from the Super Bowl. Much like Todd just said, if Jimmy G is to stay healthy, I don't see where Trey Lance is going to be the starter. Yes, if he gets hurt, then you insert him into the lineup. They traded for Jimmy G because they believed in Jimmy G. Yeah, you go out there and you try to get a Deshaun Watson prior to all the allegations, or you try to see what's going on with one of the top quarterbacks in Aaron Rodgers before you make the Trey Lance pick. But at the end of the day, you want this kid to survive in the National Football League. You don't want to put the pressure on him. There's no need to start him early.
Trey Lance's mantra for his whole life has been know your worth. That was instilled in him by his father. He's ready to show what he's all about. And to Todd's point about Jimmy G, he's only been able to start 25 of 48 possible games over the last 3 seasons due to injuries. So you might be right, Todd. All right, Diana, let's get to the latest news around the league, beginning with the situation around Jawan James.
Yeah, the league sent out a letter to all 32 teams today to remind GMs and head coaches about the Jawan James situation. Because here's what happened. We know Jawan James, he was injured when he was away from the facility. So he's most likely going to lose that $10 million guaranteed money because he didn't get injured at the facility. A lot of players didn't even know the rules. They were sounding off on social, so the league wants to make sure players are aware of that. That means on the Detroit Lions, man, Jared Goff has got to be sitting back going, I really like what I got in terms of protection. They signed Frank Ragnow as the highest paid center. He had 2 years left, Laura, on his deal, but they got him signed up. He's going to be now the highest paid center at $54 million guaranteed. So a good day for Detroit. And then, of course, it's going to be a good day for New York because the Jets, they get to see their rookie, Zach Wilson. Rookie camps for 3 teams around the league begin tomorrow. And obviously New York has been waiting. We've known for a while that Zach Wilson's the guy, but tomorrow he makes his appearance in the Big Apple as rookie camps begin for 3 teams. The rest of the teams will be next weekend.
Yeah, you remember Zach Wilson's mom being pretty emotional right before he was drafted, just thinking he's going to leave me now because he is. All right, but don't worry, Mom. How about this? New on NFL Live, we have already seen one rookie sign a deal and getting ready to arrive. That would be the Colts and their first-round edge, Kwity Paye. Now, remember, Kwity Paye, when he was drafted, turned to his mom, and said, hey, you don't have to work anymore. Special for Kwity Paye to get that deal signed. And that, of course, is the first rookie deal signed. Still plenty to come on this edition of NFL Live. We're only 1 week away from became the 4th straight quarterback selected number 1 overall. The last player to be taken number 1 wasn't a quarterback, and that was, or the one that wasn't a quarterback was Myles Garrett in 2017, but he's the one. All right, so the quarterbacks have dominated recent drafts, including 5 of the top 15 picks last week. That was crazy. Todd McShay gets no days off. Back with us again as he sets his sights on 2022 with a way too early mock draft. So, Todd, should we expect to see 3 QBs off the board at the top of the draft next year again?
So playing quarterback at University of Richmond, 1AA,
I'm sorry.
FCS
Whoops.
Doesn't count?
I forgot.
No,
You're a quarterback.
I got it.
I thought you were a wide receiver. Just kidding.
It doesn't count.
All right, run us through.
You haven't seen me run.
Yeah, exactly. Run us through your top
Cincinnati.
5. Yeah.
Cincinnati, and I didn't make this draft order up, so call somebody else and get mad at them. But Cincinnati, I have at 5, taking Zion Nelson, offensive tackle from Miami. He's a 6'5", 316-pounder. Didn't give up a sack the entire last season. Really improved from his sophomore to his junior year, and I expect him to continue to improve in that area. And I think this year we're going to see more offensive and defensive linemen early in the draft. Number 4, I've got the New York Jets coming back and taking another offensive lineman, Charles Cross, the offensive tackle from Mississippi State. Now, Mekhi Becton was the first-round pick 2 years ago. This past draft, we saw obviously Joe Douglas, the general manager, moving up for Elijah Vera Tucker, move him inside the guard, and now you get Cross on the opposite side to protect the investment in Zach Wilson. Then at number 3, I just went value here. I just had to get this guy off the board. Derek Stingley, the cornerback from LSU. Outside of the quarterbacks, you could make an argument that he's going to be the best prospect in this entire class. He didn't play quite as well in 2020 as he did in 2019 when he had 6 interceptions. But this guy, he might get the highest cornerback grade that I've given in a long time. I just love his tape outside of when he's playing Devontae Smith against Alabama. Then Keaton Slovis, the Detroit Lions at number 2. There are other quarterbacks. I know we can get in an argument later. But Slovis, I just like the way he carries himself. I like the ability to extend plays inside the pocket and throw on the move. Just watch that Arizona State tape from a year ago. The way he drives them back and the ball placement that he has. I think Slovis is very underrated. And then finally, number 1, they stuck me with Houston here. Sorry, Texans fans. But Kayvon Thibodeau, the defensive end, I think he's got a chance to be a star. He could be the first overall pick. He's that good. 6'5", 250 pounds. He's long, he's athletic, and he has some power in terms of the speed to power move that you need as a pass rusher. So Thibodeau could be a very high pick after a year where we didn't have, Laura, very many edge rushers come off the board in the first half of the first round.
Yeah, and we're looking here at the top 10 picks of your way too early 2022 mock draft. 3 offensive linemen coming off the board in the top 10. The second quarterback, you were saying we could have an argument about quarterbacks. We may do it in a second here. You got Sam Howell out of North Carolina landing at the Eagles at 7 overall. Again, Todd didn't make this order, by the way. So he said you'd have to talk to somebody else for that. But first, Keaton Slovis heading to Detroit with the second overall pick. Let's bring Key in here. Of course, we've got a former Trojan on the set with us who can talk about this. And you've watched a lot of Keaton Slovis. I actually covered him once in college as well. Really was impressed with him. He's a great young man, great leader. But what do you think, Key? Would he be the first quarterback off the board for you?
I mean, I know it's Todd's deal, and I feel bad.
This ought to be good.
Saying, no, I don't think he'll be the first quarterback off the board, and he's a Trojan. He's a starter by default. JT Daniels would have still been the starter at USC had he not gotten hurt. He got hurt, and I've watched Keaton Slovis, and I think he's great. I think he works well within that system. On top of that, he loses 2 of his top receivers from a year ago in St. Brown as well as Tyler Vaughn. So when you look at it, what is USC truly really going to be? Or are they going to allow him to throw the ball 50 times a game like he's been doing? I mean, completion percentage is pretty good. Touchdown to interception is pretty good, but I don't think he'll be the second pick of the draft, and it's too early, Todd. You know, and I know that.
Yes, I mean, he completed 70% of his throws the last 2 years, which is 7th highest in the FBS. Listen, if you recruited better at USC, Key, I think you would see what I'm seeing in this guy. But in all honesty, I think Spencer Rattler is probably the most talented quarterback in this class coming out of Oklahoma. He just needs to be more consistent. But if he plays great this year, and everything tells you that Lincoln Riley is going to wind up developing him very well, then he could be the first overall pick when we're back here next year.
Yeah, Todd, I mean, one thing that Lincoln Riley hadn't been able to do is really develop a quarterback because he's had these one-and-done quarterbacks over the last couple years. That was all Key's fault that USC hadn't done as well over the last few years. Let's bring in an LSU guy who has certainly had a lot to brag about recently. Ryan Clark joining the show now. RC, so glad to have you here. And let's talk about Derek Stingley Jr. because I got to tell you, I talked to some people at LSU. And this was even last year. They said this guy might have a chance to be the best cornerback ever. Cornerback. This is like DBU to some people to ever come out of LSU. How good is Derek Stingley Jr. in your mind?
I'll just give you a quick story. He was an early enrollee, so he actually got to go to bowl practice entering his freshman year. He was 17 years old, and Dave Aranda, who was the defensive coordinator at the time, said publicly that Derek Stingley was the best cornerback on the team at the time, and that's with having first-round draft picks, second-round draft picks on the team. That's how talented this kid is. Had 6 interceptions as a freshman. Last year was a bit of a down year. Took sick right before the first game, but when Jeffrey Okudah was drafted number 3 overall 2 years ago by the Detroit Lions. I was talking to some coaches at the combine at the time, and I said it, and they agreed with me that what they had seen, and from what we'd seen from Derek Stingley, that he would have been the number 1 cornerback drafted in that draft. And he was 18 years old at the time, Laura. And I think after having last year, having some injury, suffering through a little bit of an inconsistent year, he understands what this year means. And listen, I know his father. I know Derek. I've known him since he was 14. He's a kid who understood what this path was going to be. He was going to start as a freshman, and he was going to leave as a junior as the number 1 cornerback taken. I think we'll be speaking about his talent the same way we talked about Kyle Pitts coming into this draft this year.
Wow. Yeah. Todd, you want to get in real fast here?
Yeah, I think he could be Stephon Gilmore, like that kind of talent. And Stephon's been, at his peak, one of the premier corners in the entire NFL. And I completely agree with Pitts. And I just said it before. He may be the best player drafted next year that's not a quarterback.
Guys, I got to say, I may be an extreme nerd, but I'm excited talking about 2022. Anyone else? Todd? You pumped?
I just want a beach somewhere.
Todd's ready for a break.
No,
Todd's ready for vacation.
We're talking about the draft next year, okay? This is exciting stuff. All right, next on NFL Live, year 3 has been pivotal for quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield. But ahead of his 3rd NFL season, we'll tell you about Daniel Jones, first defender off the board in the draft a week ago at number 8 to the Panthers. Some had Patrick Surtain, the Alabama corner, graded higher, but Horn has been a favorite of our show for a while. So let's get our resident defensive back, Ryan Clark, in here, and we can now pair players and teams. So we gave you the task, RC, of coming up with some draft superlatives for this year's class. Let's start here, Mr. Reliable.
Listen, Mr. Reliable is Patrick Surtain Jr. This dude started as a freshman for Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I played for Nick. You don't just do that if he can't depend on you. Always in position. Great in press coverage. Great in off coverage. Makes plays on the ball. And he's a great tackler. This is the type of dude that grew up in the house with the coach. Oh, by the way, that coach was his dad, Pat Surtain Sr., who was also a baller in this league. And so this is somebody that the Denver Broncos plug in the first play, and he starts and balls. And this is the Y'all Must Have Forgot Award, and that's Javon Holland from Oregon. I know what it is. He opted out. We didn't get to see him. This dude's made plays on the outside, on the inside at nickel, also at safety. This was a great pick by the Dolphins to understand what type of player they had. Coming into last year, he was a top 15 type guy. He didn't play, and like Roy Jones said, y'all must have forgot, but it's all good because he gonna show you. And now we also have Trayvon Moehrig. This is my you fell down to come up. We all thought this was a first round talent. This was the dude that was all around the field. Some compared him to a taller Tyrann Mathieu. Now he goes to the Raiders. You can bump Jonathan Abram down into the box. He can roam the free safety position, making plays on the football. Once you get this guy on the field, you're going to realize all you dudes in the first round, first half of the second, y'all messed up. But he just fell down to come up. Minor setback for a major comeback. And the last dude is, I will lock my daddy down to J.C. Horn. He ain't worried about who you are. This dude said he'll go face to face with Pops. Yeah, his Pops, Joe Horn, reaching up under the goalpost, grabbing the phone to make a phone call after a touchdown. He says, Pops, you couldn't get to the phone because you couldn't get to the zone. This is a dude that's a competitor. He's going to beat you up at the line. He's going to finish on the football. This is the type of player you want. And that's why the Carolina Panthers said, we'll get Sam Darnold. We'll give him that fifth-year option because we need a star at cornerback, and J.C. Horn is that guy.
Lock my daddy down, too. There's nothing like superlatives with Ryan Clark. Always good. All right, guys, so I mentioned the schedule will be released next week. The Giants have to play the Bucs and Chiefs in 2021. It's the all-important year 3 for Daniel Jones. We saw Josh Allen taking that massive leap year 3. In fact, it was the largest increase in total QBR from 2019 to 2020. So Daniel Jones can do that too, right? Well, it's not that simple. Worth pointing out, he also had Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator. Still, the Giants have given Daniel Jones an offense full of weapons entering this third season. They signed Kenny Golladay in free agency, drafted Kadarius Toney in the first round, adding them to a long list of playmakers. Saquon Barkley should be healthy. Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, and Kyle Rudolph. Dave Gettleman doing everything he can to at least surround Jones with the playmakers he needs to have success. So, Diana, how much support does Daniel Jones have within the organization at this point?
Yeah, Dave Gettleman did his job as a GM, giving Daniel Jones the weapons, and now it's really up to Daniel Jones, according to Dave Gettleman, to really take some big steps this next season. So when you talk about confidence, look, he's still the starting quarterback for the New York Giants. That tells you they're confident he can do it. Do we know the future? We don't. Gettleman saying that he has these expectations for him this season tells you this is kind of Daniel Jones' time to perform, to prove that he is the future. And Laura, Joe Judge recently went on ESPN Radio to just talk about Daniel Jones' season. And he said, I don't want to make an excuse, but Daniel was dealing with injuries that most players would not even be out on the field playing with. And our Giants reporter actually reported it during the season as well, that hamstring injury was way worse than what we were really discussing here on the show and what we were reading. So, yes, it can still be an excuse, but a healthy Daniel Jones could certainly take some big steps forward.
Yeah, it's an important point. And RC, I mean, even without making excuses, I think we all realize this is a business, and maybe some people have been too hard on Daniel Jones. But do you think heading into year 3, this really is time for Daniel Jones to show what he's all about if he wants to keep his job?
No, it absolutely is. Daniel Jones is in the place, to me, where Sam Darnold was entering last season. A situation where you're going to have to prove to us that we should make an investment into you for the future. You go out and you get him weapons, whether it's Galladay, Tony, Rudolph, or Saquon Barkley coming back in the backfield. And obviously the offensive line is going to have to perform better for Daniel Jones. But it's not going to be about injury. It's going to be about, can you control the football? Can you protect the football within the pocket? Also, can we make plays downfield? We've seen Daniel Jones do things with his legs, but now it's time for him to be the complete quarterback. And no, he doesn't have to take the Josh Allen jump, but you do look forward to him being a guy that moves ahead the way that, let's say, someone like Baker Mayfield did, and seeing him progress and now saying to yourself, this is a guy we can pick up the 5th-year option and we feel like moving forward he can be our quarterback of the future. Because if you don't see that from him this year, Dave Gettleman has to really consider getting another guy, or the Mara family has to consider getting another GM to start this thing all over with.
And much like Ryan said, this is kind of the Sam Darnold kind of situation that he's in, the Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield. You think about it, you enter in your third year, it's progression. Year 1, it's kind of like whatever, you're learning the NFL. Year 2, okay, show me you can play in this league. Year 3, you need to make that giant leap from 1 to 3 with no hesitation. By the time you get to year 4, not that the Pro Bowl is everything, but we do measure guys based on the Pro Bowl. You need to be knocking on the Pro Bowl door. They've given you everything from a skill position standpoint. Yes, Will Hernandez at the guard position. Andrew Thomas, give him a check mark as a rookie. He needs to get better to solidify and help on the offensive side of the ball on the line. But at quarterback, either you put up or you shut up, especially in New York City.
Right.
We've seen quarterbacks in year 4 make those giant leaps. And we're talking about a 5th-year option potentially. You got to show us that you can win the division and take them to the playoffs. Otherwise, they need to find another guy.
Yeah, and just a reminder for context, guys, remember, he was picked 6th overall, so that's why we're talking about this amount of pressure on Daniel Jones. And you're picked that high, you do sometimes have to show up. Now, I mentioned this, the schedule coming out next week, they've got to play the AFC West and the NFC South. So as you can see, the Giants are going to have to play the Chiefs and the Super Bowl champion Buccaneers. Not an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination. I want to get Todd McShay back in here. Todd, if the Giants do end up targeting a quarterback in the draft next year, give us some names to watch, the style of play that teams should expect from them.
Yeah, I'm going to start with Keaton Slovis. It's Keyshawn's favorite player in this draft coming up in 2022.
Oh, boy.
The USC quarterback. Listen, he reminds me a little bit of Joe Burrow. You know, he winds up going to a big-time program, but he wasn't highly recruited coming out of high school. 6'3", doesn't have the biggest frame, and has a solid, not elite arm. He can maneuver inside the pocket. He's smart, he's accurate, and he's really able to throw rolling to his right and to his left. The next guy, Sam Howell, reminds me of Baker Mayfield. You know, coming out of UNC next year, it's going to be his third year as a starter. This guy's got energy to him. He's not the tallest. He's about 6'2", 225 pounds, though. Like Baker, he's got that thick lower body. He's strong. He's sturdy. He's a tough runner. And he also, I mean, he came onto the scene as a freshman and threw 38 touchdown passes in 2019. That was an FBS record for a true freshman. And then maybe the most physically gifted, but maybe the least consistent of the group is Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma. And Lincoln Riley does a great job bringing quarterbacks along, even if it's just 1 year, as we saw with Baker and Kyler Murray. But I think Spencer Rattler, this is going to be his year. He's so explosive in terms of his ability to throw on the run, throw down the field, big arm. He's got all the tools. If he develops, you could see Rattler as the #1 overall pick in 2022.
Wow. Hey, by the way, Todd, if the USC fans out there are looking for Keyshawn, his Twitter is at
Man, will
Keyshawn.
y'all stop?
It's at Keyshawn, so
Thank
it's
you.
just KEYSHAWN. You can find him there and send him some tweets. Pro top 10 picks: Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and the Eagles trading up for Heisman Trophy winner Devonta Smith. That's tied for the most pass catchers selected in the top 10 in the common draft era. Time to talk pass catchers, and Keyshawn knows a thing or two about being taken early in the draft as a pass catcher. We can now pair these players and teams, so we gave you the task of coming up with some draft superlatives for this year's class. Let's start here. Who will be the first receiver with the 1,000-yard season?
I think it's Bateman out of Minnesota. He goes to and when you think about it, he goes to the Baltimore Ravens. They got an excellent guy who can run routes. They also brought in two receiver coaches. Not only did they bring in T. Martin from the University of Tennessee, but they got a guy. Now, listen to this name. Remember Keith Williams. Keith Williams trains guys like Devontae Adams in the offseason along with Tyreek Hill. He's going to be able to put the emphasis on getting this young man the ball. Sammy Watkins is there with him. Hollywood Brown's there with him. He's going to get that 1,000 yards.
Yeah, you hope that happens for Lamar Jackson's sake, too. All right, who got drafted key into the toughest situation?
I think it's Devontae Smith. I think when you think about it, yes, you pair him with his old quarterback and Jalen Hurts, but yet and still, this is a new head coach and a new quarterback getting the opportunity to be a full-time guy at the position. But when you think about it, who else is there? Jalen Rigger's the guy opposite of him. He didn't do anything as a first-round pick. Devontae Smith is coming into the National Football League. He has to learn how to play the position because it's different in college.
Yeah, we traded up for you, young man. Now you're the #1 receiver. All right, who will be their quarterback's best friend on the field?
I think it's going to be Chase, LSU. He is. He's very quick, sudden. He's strong. He also catches the ball with his hands. A lot of young receivers are body snatchers. They like to catch the ball with their body and not their hands. But I think when you look at him, the only problem that I have is can Joe Burrow get him the football, knowing that offensive line is suspect.
Yeah, Key, to your point, prior to Joe Burrow's injury last season, he had thrown 219 passes in under 2.5 seconds. Only Ben Roethlisberger actually threw such passes from weeks 1 through 11. So the biggest difference between Burrow and Big Ben and Brady at this point of the season, though, was the Bengals rookie was sacked 7 more times than those two combined. So as you see the numbers there, the point being that Joe Burrow getting the ball out quickly, but still dealing with just being hit behind that O-line that was difficult. Again, they passed on Penei Sewell, instead decide to go with Jamar Chase. But RC, you're familiar with Chase, of course, the LSU receiver. What about Burrow's quick release with Jamar Chase do you like when you think about how that offense will look despite the O-line?
Well, I mean, the one thing you like is, and you listen to Key kind of talk about him being sudden, him being strong, it's run after the catch. When you watch some of the video of Jamar Chase against C.J. Henderson, A.J. Terrell, Trayvon Diggs, guys who played really well last year, they couldn't get him on the ground once he caught the football. So run and catch will be a huge thing for him. But I'm skeptical of Joe Burrow having to protect himself with the quick release all the time. When you have a guy like T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, you want to be able to push the ball down the field field and create chunk plays. I think you watch with the Pittsburgh Steelers as the season went along, that short passing game doesn't always produce wins, doesn't always produce yardage, doesn't always produce points. So they're going to have to find a way to protect Joe Burrow eventually, so some of these good wide receivers and Jamar Chase, who could be a great wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, can get some plays downfield. And Key knows this. If you can create chunk yardage and chunk plays, it keeps you from having to drive the ball with so many snaps, and that keeps you from making those mistakes.
And that is true, chunk plays. But the interesting thing about this, and I got to put my lean down right now, Ryan, because what I'm about to say is Zach Taylor came out and talked about the quick game and getting the ball out quick. So you tell me, Laura and Ryan, you drafted a receiver to quick game, a vertical receiver with vertical threat speed, with sudden quickness that can lift the coverage to do what? To quick game? And you said he reminds you he could be the A.J. Green. You have T. Higgins for that.
Right.
You passed on Penei Sewell, who could protect you, but rather than take a tackle that you could potentially move the guard or whatever, you took a receiver. It's nothing against Jamar Chase, the kid. It's what you're going to do. Did you not think, hey, it would be better to take a tackle so we can get the ball out however we want to, but rather than that, we rather try to get the ball out quick in three-step drop game. And you know, Ryan, as a defensive back, there's only 3 routes in the quick game: a slant, a hitch, and a quick out.
That's it, man.
Other than that, you're going to get hit in your mouth. That's it.
So, Ryan,
you took a dude that's a vertical threat to run those routes?
Yeah, so Ryan, does that scare you from the defensive standpoint?
No, it doesn't scare me at all. If you're telling me I just got a tackle and I don't have to worry about you pushing the ball downfield, then we're going to have a field day and calling coverage so we can see the football. I just think the huge thing is, as much as I love Jamar Chase, we talked about it, Laura, I would have went with Penei Sewell. The lasting memory for me is Joe Burrow being carted off of the field in Washington. You cannot have that happen again to your young franchise quarterback.
Guys, Burrow recorded the 9th fastest average time to pass in the NFL last season. He's getting it out quickly, as we keep saying. It didn't stop him from also having the 8th highest sack rate. The numbers tell the story so well there. All right, still to come on NFL Live, the Packers trading up to take Jordan Love last year affected the team's relationship with Aaron Rodgers, but Keyshawn thinks there's more to blame